For decades, these rundown row homes have littered side streets in Atlantic City. But in the last 10 years, the CRDA has invested millions of dollars in transforming these eyesores into brand new family homes for thousands. But when Atlantic City's first casino resorts opened its doors almost 20 years ago, gaming was more of a hindrance to small business than a help. More than 500,000 people will come to see the Big Apple Circus this year. It'll travel to more than 13 cities in a 33-week tour by July and raise millions of dollars for charity. During the recession in the early 90s, Marriott fell onto some tough economic times. The operation split into two separate companies, which brought lawsuits from bondholders. But Marriott says he learned a great deal from that time of turmoil. The furniture aficionados will host a brand new show this fall on the Learning Channel called Men in Tool Belts. In this show, the furniture guys will tackle do-it-yourself jobs around the house. On Wall Street, a late rally allowed the blue chips to end a four-session losing streak. The Dow Industrials rose about 5 points to 77.87 after recovering from an 85-point slide. Oil and gas stocks led the way. Volume was 496 million shares. Exxon submitted the highest bid, $9.1 million, for a number of oil and gas drilling rights in the western Gulf of Mexico. Exxon shares headed up on the news, rising 1.5 points. Chevron jumped 1.11 to 79 5/16. Eastman Kodak was also higher, up 15/16 on the day, and Caterpillar gained 1.7 to 60 1/16. The Dow had lost about 240 points in its 4 consecutive losing sessions, or about 3% over that span. Dan, when Congress reconvenes next week, do you think it's likely they'll be able to fill those positions by the end of the year?
Well, the Senate's going to be in session, Trish, for 2.5 months, and I think they're going to be under a lot of pressure on both sides.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on that. Thanks, Dan. Buoyed by good health news and a growing trend toward boutique beverages, small wineries are finding great success in the marketplace. But the cost of bottling their wines can often prove their biggest financial obstacle. That's where a portable bottling plant business comes in. First Business correspondent Marianne Gretchen fills us in on the filling station. It's only rock and roll, but the Rolling Stones are betting enough fans still like it. Rock and roll's bad boys are hitting the road again for a year-long tour. The Bridges to Babylon tour will open September 23rd in Chicago and wrap up in Europe next summer. The Stones are one of the few rock bands that still sell out stadiums. Their 1994 Voodoo Lounge tour earned more than $121 million, the top-grossing rock tour in history. And that's all for First Business this Tuesday morning. For the entire First Business News team, I'm Trish McShane. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back here first thing tomorrow morning.
First Business, business news for business people, has been brought to you by Mass Mutual, the Blue Chip Company, and by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Betting the Asian currency crisis will slow U.S. growth, Federal Reserve policymakers voted to leave short-term interest rates unchanged. The Federal Open Market Committee hasn't raised the benchmark rate since March '97. The key overnight federal funds rate remains at 5.5%. But the Fed's decision to sit on the sidelines didn't surprise former Fed Governor Lyle Gramley.
I was with everybody else in the market. I thought the Fed would sit still today. But I don't think this was an easy decision for them to arrive at. I'll bet this was a very contentious meeting. I think they probably adopted an asymmetric directive leaning towards tightening. And I bet we'll find when the minutes of this meeting come out that one or more members of the FOMC dissented.
With the Asian financial turmoil still looming, Gramley says the Fed didn't want to upset the apple cart, especially with almost non-existent inflation. With explosive growth in personal consumption and housing and an estimated first quarter growth rate of over 3%, the economy is showing no signs of losing steam as it enters its 8th year of expansion. But Gramley says the Fed does foresee the worst of the Asian impact hitting the U.S. economy during the second half of the year.
Perhaps the second quarter will show a growth rate of perhaps 2%, maybe even a little less. But then the question will be, once the effects of the Southeast Asian crisis are largely over, does the latent strength of domestic demand begin to reemerge again? giving us a growth rate in the latter half of the year.
That strong growth rate, coupled with accelerated inflation, could prompt the Fed to boost interest rates at its next meeting, May 19th. Trish McShane, First Business. Marriott's mega billion-dollar enterprise all started when J. Willard Marriott bought an A&W franchise and opened this root beer stand in Washington, D.C. in 1927. 2 years later, Marriott added hot food, and the Hot Chop Drive-In restaurant was born. Company sales hit $21.5 million by 1954. The ribbon was cut opening the first Marriott Hotel, Twin Bridges, in Arlington, Virginia in 1957. It was billed as the world's largest motor hotel, and J. Willard Marriott Jr. was lodging manager. Marriott says corporate philosophy during those founding years is still the global conglomerate's golden rule.
My dad really established the philosophy that if you take good care of your people, that they'll take good care of the customers, and the customers will come back. He believed in doing your best, and then your best wasn't good enough, you had to do even better.
Marriott International is the #1 hospitality company in the world, with over 1,500 hotels and more than 200,000 employees. Marriott says listening to those employees over the years has been the key to his success.
I think when you go to make strategic decisions in this business, you better understand what you're doing, and the only way to understand what you're doing is get out and talk to the people. Talk to the customers and talk to the employees and listen to what they have to say. It's one thing to talk to them, it's another thing to listen.
How are you doing? Nice to see you. How you doing, Mr. Marriott? How are you? Great. Always a pleasure.
The hotel magnate says employees first is the cornerstone of Marriott's corporate culture, chronicled in his new book, The Spirit to Serve.
We're in the service business. We don't manufacture anything at all, and our customer satisfaction is directly related to how well our people serve the guests.
Marriott has established a resource hotline where employees can use an 800 number to get help with family and work-related issues in 15 different languages.
The key to keeping them happy is to really let them know that they're important.
Tomorrow we'll hear how Marriott steered his hotel and food services giant through the 1990 real estate crash and brought it to the $10 billion company it is today. Trish McShane, First Business. Millions of young American men left their families and went overseas to defend their country in World War II. More than 400,000 women also answered the call of duty.
I am one of the many wives serving in Europe. I want you folks back home to know that we are over here to aid the armed forces in Europe.
Now, more than half a century later, their efforts are being recognized.
Their heroism is chiseled in the stone of our national memory.
Nearly 30,000 active and veteran servicewomen made their pilgrimage to the memorial's dedication to reflect on their military service. Old friends were united, shared some laughs, and told war stories. June Wandry Mann was only 23 when she served as an Army nurse in North Africa.
Sometimes you just break down in tears. You see old friends, like I met this nurse who was in Australia. She's sitting in the same row.
Yeah, I've choked up more times these last 2 days than I can remember. I mean, it's really been great.
The 101-year-old Frida Hardin, clad in her Navy Yeoman World War I uniform, the ceremony was a time to say goodbye.
To those young women who may be thinking of a career in the military service, I say go for it. It's not likely that you will be,
That I will be
meeting with you again. So I bid each of you a fond farewell.
The words of 11 women who have served their country are inscribed here on these glass tablets, and on sunny days their thoughts will reflect on the marble walls below.
One of those which just strikes very deeply to me, it's one I've quoted many, many times, and it was from an Army nurse who served in the China-Burma-India theater in World War II. And she said, "Let the generations know that women also guaranteed their freedom." And that's what this memorial is about.
Trish McShane, First Business.